Ashton Jenty is already a first-round pick in startup drafts, but should he be? We'll debate next.
You are Locked On Dynasty Football, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Here are your hosts, Marcus Mosher and Kate Magdziuk.
Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. You can also read me over at the 33rd Team. Joining me today, as always, is Kate Magdziuk. You can follow her on Twitter at Kate Magdziuk. You've also seen her at Pro Football Focus and a million other different websites. And it's a Wednesday show, so of course, the great Matt Williamson is here. Follow him on Twitter at Williamson NFL. Check him out on all of the Locked On podcasts that we have out there right now. We got some new ADP from our guy, Ryan McDowell.
I remember that guy.
Yeah, he did a couple podcasts here. Matt, I want to go through some of this ADP. I'll just read it for you guys to start. It's Chase, Jefferson, Lamb, Jahmyr Gibbs, Malik Neighbors, Bijan Robinson, RB2 at 6, Amon-Ra St. Brown at 7, Brian Thomas at 8, Brock Bowers at 9, Puka Nacua at 10, Ashton Jenty at 11, and then Nico Collins at 12. The story here for me is Ashton Jenty at 11. Should he be a first-round pick in startup drafts right now?
Yes, and I think he's too low, to be honest with you. And speaking of McDowell, I remember when him and I used to do shows when Saquon was coming out, and he was higher than this, leading up into his draft in April. Bijan was higher than this leading up to the day he got picked in April, before he was even an NFL player. I think Gibbs is too high on this list, and I would rather have Jenty than Gibbs. Is that crazy?
No, I don't think it's crazy at all. I think one of the pushbacks that you'll get is, well, Gibbs is on a really good offense with a really good offensive line, whereas Jenty, I kind of feel like, Matt, there's only 3 potential landing spots for Jenty right now. It's either the Raiders at 6, the Saints at 9, and the Bears at 10. And I don't know how you feel about those 3, but I think only one of those gets people really excited. How much is the landing spot going to matter as to how high you rank him?
The Saints would stink, but, I mean, the Giants weren't great for Saquon. The Falcons were fine for Bijan. I mean, when you don't expect them to go to the Chiefs, I mean, it just kind of baked in to some degree. I'm the only one on this island, but if I were the Jags at 5, I would consider them.
Kate, where do you have Jenty ranked in first-round startup drafts?
I definitely think he's too low here. I'd probably consider him closer to the 8 and the Brian Thomas, Brock Bowers range here, maybe, if that feels a little aggressive.
Can I ask you, what about Bijan? Is Bijan, to kind of compare and contrast those two?
To me, they're just neck and neck. They're like Jefferson and Chase.
So how would you stack those guys, Kate?
I'd prefer Bijan, though. I know from a dynasty perspective, like we talk a lot about how a player being on their rookie contract can be a huge advantage because they're not bound for this shakeup. Obviously, Bijan, he's a couple of years into his career now, so he's not got as much time on his rookie deal left. That's a point for Ashton Jenty. But I also kind of know the landscape of the Atlanta Falcons offense. I feel like I have a pretty good picture of what they're trying to orchestrate there in Atlanta. So that's a point for Bijan. Obviously, Jenty, we know, has this generational kind of skill set. But like for me, these guys are kind of so close that it's just going to depend. If I'm, maybe picking right there at, 7, 8, 9, I'm just going to take whichever guy's there, right? Like, do you want to take the devil you know or the devil you don't? Matt, and neither of them are devils. Both of them are angels.
There you go. Matt, do you have Jenty as RB1 then right now in Dynasty Leagues?
I'm torn. I mean, I'm thinking about this for the first time to pull back the curtain. And one thing I want to throw out to you guys to kind of help me make my decision between Bijan and Jenty, because Gibbs would be third. I still have both those guys.
I'm agreeing. because you just worry that they're never
Workload.
going to lean fully into him, right?
Yeah, I just think the workload is different,
Yeah.
and he's a little smaller. I know it's not much, but we're talking about running backs here, and they don't have much of a shelf life. Bijan's been in the league a couple of years. Is the age thing enough for you to put Jeanty over Bijan? To me, that would be my number one argument if I was Bijan or Genty's lawyer.
So I like Bijan, the prospect and the player, better than Jeanty, and I actually really like the landing spot in Atlanta. You're
Yeah.
together. I think their offensive line's pretty good, but you're just resetting the clock 2 years on a player that is a singular prospect, right? So if I can, I don't saying gaining 2 years is kind of weird, but it's like, yeah, if I
It's
can
a lot for running backs, though.
if I can get 2 years younger and kind of reset a little bit, I probably do that. I think I'm with you, Matt. Like, I'm not a super massive Ashton Jenty fan, but you're talking about a 21-year-old running back who's going to be drafted inside the top 10. It's hard to ignore that.
And I'm going to be honest, you guys may be swaying me a little bit here because I've firmly throughout the offseason had him as my RB3 in dynasty leagues. But the more I'm listening to this conversation, I do think there's a very rational argument. Like Gibbs, you can make the case, well, yeah, he's on a really great offense. We know kind of exactly what we're going to get. We do have the departure of Ben Johnson this offseason. That's a factor. There's also the David Montgomery factor. I've been a huge David Montgomery proponent. I think he's one of the most underrated fantasy assets, one of the most underrated dynasty assets, because I think he's just kind of a heartbeat of that offense in general. That does factor into Gibbs's value as well.
Real quick on landing spot.
Like, I get it.
Real quick on landing spot. Not to fight you, Marcus, but I can't really wrap my head around the Saints picking them. I kind of think it's the Bears or the Raiders. The Saints would be the worst option we've thrown out there, and I just don't trust the organization. Plus, Kamara might clog things. I know.
The Saints are just a wild team, but it just feels like they are a team with an older starting running back. And obviously Kellen Moore's there. He had success with Ezekiel Elliott and Saquon Barkley. Maybe he's going to want to get that version, but I kind of agree.
The Saints are like always mismanaging their resources.
Oh, they just live for today. Yeah.
And that's why I don't think we can completely rule it out. Man, I wanted to ask you though, let's say we're all in agreement that Jeanty is RB1 or even RB2.
Mm-hmm.
How many receivers at that point are you taking over Jeanty? Because I think all of us are in agreement here. The best way, if you're doing a super flex or if you're just valuing these players one for one, you want to go with the receivers because they have the longer shelf life. Chase, Jefferson, Lamb, I'm assuming you're all taking over Jeanty, but what about that next group of like Neighbors, Amon-Ra, Brian Thomas?
Yeah, every time I've only done it twice in the 7 leagues I'm in, but twice I just tried. I'm going to try a running back build, and I hate those teams. I mean, they're a mess. I mean, they're all old, and you can never recoup. So I urge people not to do that. So that's probably going to sound harsh, but definitely Chase, Jefferson, Lamb, Neighbors, Thomas, who I prefer to St. Brown.
I agree.
St. Brown's where I start to at least consider going Bijan or Jeanty. He's just taken such a beating, and he's not the ultra talented Randy Moss specimen. I like St. Brown a lot, but that's about my price point when I start thinking about running back or receiver.
Kate, I'm assuming you're in the similar ballpark, 5 or 6 receivers at least you take over Jeanty right now.
At least. And again, this is kind of a concept that we reiterate over and over on this podcast, is the fact that because of that longevity at the wide receiver position, because of the fact that running backs do have this short-term shelf life. Now, the generational prospects, that's a different conversation, but it's still a conversation because running backs are taking big hits, especially if we're projecting high usage for Ashton Jenty at the next level, which we are. And already coming into the NFL draft, he's got a decent amount of mileage on his tires. So like that does always have to be a part of that conversation. And it's just not when it comes to wide receivers. So yeah, I always will lean wide receiver over running back as the core, the crux of my dynasty build. I'm going to go with Neighbors, Lamb, Jefferson, Chase, obviously. Brian Thomas, Amon-Ra St. Brown is probably where I start that question mark. But even then,
Yeah. All right,
yeah.
let's talk about
real quick, guys.
Yeah, go ahead.
I bet you guys have done this. I bet most people are aware. But the running backs drafted in the top 10 overall, if you started 2015, it's Gurley, it's Zeke, it's Fournette, McCaffrey. Fournette's the only one close to a bust. Barkley, I'm sorry, not Jacobs. He did not go in the top 10. And Bijan. I mean, they're like the best backs we've seen in the last 15
And Gibbs
years.
went 12, right?
And Gibbs went 12. What
Yeah.
I'm saying, the bust rate is non-existent. I mean, I'm not even calling Fournette's a bust even as a stretch.
And there's a reason for that. Generally, these teams that take running backs inside the top 12 picks, they're incentivized to use them, right? Because if you draft a running back at 6 and you're only giving him 13 carries a game, your fans are going to be upset. So we see these players get monster workloads early in their careers. And a lot of times they're on bad teams. Yeah, and a lot of times they're on bad teams. I mean, that's why they're drafting inside the top 12. So even, let's say, a neutral landing spot like the Raiders, I'm just not all that concerned because it's going to get so much work to it's going to make up for it.
Yep, 100%.
Yeah. Let's talk about CeeDee Lamb, who is currently being the 3rd overall player drafted in startup drafts. But is that too high? We will get to that next. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love FanDuel. I love betting on the NBA, and I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite NBA team, Lakers, or diving into player props from 3-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player props. Plus, after the game tips off, because you can't always be there for tip-off, but you can combine your live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. Nobody else is doing that right now. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Matt, I want to talk about the 3rd overall player in Ryan's new ADP. Again, Chase at 1, Jefferson at 2, Lamb at 3. One of the things that if you go read some of the comments in the tweet that he had, there were a lot of people that were thinking CeeDee Lamb was overvalued and that they would prefer Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, 2 much younger receivers. I know there's some concern that the Cowboys are going to draft a receiver maybe in round 1 this year, but where do you stand on CeeDee Lamb as the 3rd overall player?
We kind of brushed over this because you mentioned Thomas again. And a big thing I'm psyched about him is just Liam Cohen. I think he's going to be a combination of Evans and Godwin in terms of usage, which is incredible. That being said, Lamb would still be my 3rd receiver. And part of it, I just think that whoever you stick at 3, someone's going to complain because there's a gap after Chase and Jefferson. There's a handful of guys that you mentioned that at least have a case, including Neighbors. But Lamb's really, really solid. And not to steal your thunder, but we talked about it before we hit record. I think we both think there's a really good chance Dallas has a 1st-round receiver in the mix, but I don't think I care.
Well, I don't know that you should. Look at the 2 receivers that are being drafted ahead of CeeDee Lamb. It's Justin Jefferson, who's playing with Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson and has an unproven JJ McCarthy at quarterback. And then the Bengals have T. Higgins, and they just paid Mike Gesicki. So, like, Dallas has nothing at receiver outside of CeeDee Lamb right now. And in some ways, I almost wonder, like, if they drafted Matthew Golden, if that's not going to open up more opportunities for CeeDee Lamb. So we've known for a long time they've wanted to get a number 2 receiver to pair with CeeDee. I just don't think it matters all that much.
Agreed.
Kate, what do you think?
I think all of that is fair. And generally speaking, when I'm looking at the wide receiver position, I'm trying to roll with talent, especially in Dynasty, right? Like, I think over the last few years, we've seen more now than ever, like the quickness at which a landscape can change for an NFL franchise. We've seen more kind of surprising changes at the quarterback position for a lot of NFL franchises. We've seen some big trades. We've seen some big free agency moves. Things change very quickly. So when I'm looking at the wide receiver position, I'm going to roll with the talent first and foremost, and that's going to be my key evaluation in terms of their dynasty value. And then I'm going to use some of the circumstantial things like stability at quarterback, the surrounding talent. Those are going to be my tiebreakers in cases where I'm maybe looking at similarly tiered players.
Kate, can I
I
ask you
think I think Lamb is perfectly fine here, wide receiver 3.
One of the concerns that a lot of people have is that, well, Malik Neighbors, who is being drafted very, very close to CeeDee Lamb, he's just 5 years younger. But I have concerns, obviously, about the quarterback. But what if the Giants draft Travis Hunter this year and he's playing receiver? They've already signed Darius Slayton to a big contract this offseason. Wan'Dale Robinson had almost 100 catches last year. I think I understand he's 5 years younger, but man, there's just as much instability with Malik Neighbors as maybe there is with CeeDee Lamb.
It's funny though, like if they draft Hunter, boy, it hurts Neighbors. But if Dallas takes Golden or Tet, I don't care. And it's true. I mean, that's the same
because of the quarterback, right? They just don't have a quarterback right now that can support more than one passing option.
Mm-hmm. But I do think Neighbors is the best candidate to challenge Lamb for number 3. It also hurts my soul that A.J. Brown's not even anywhere close to this conversation, nor should he be.
Can I push back on that?
Yeah.
There's actually a receiver out there that if I'm taking one over CeeDee Lamb, it's not Neighbors, it's Brian Thomas. And because, we both believe in Liam Cohen as as a play caller, as an offensive guru, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's just playing with Trevor Lawrence, right? We saw Brian Thomas last year be super productive with Mac Jones. Imagine what it could look like with a healthy Trevor Lawrence. And even if Trevor Lawrence isn't healthy, he could still put up monster numbers. I just think that Jacksonville situation is so much more appealing to me than whatever's going on in New York right now.
I get it. I 100% get it.
Okay, how do you stand on this Neighbors versus CeeDee Lamb versus Brian Thomas?
Definitely Lamb. I think the biggest tiebreaker for me in terms of Neighbors versus, Brian Thomas, it definitely comes down to the situation. Like I said, I want to evaluate talent first. I think from a physical gift standpoint, both of them in a similar tier. So let's go to the situation. Who has the edge at quarterback? Brian Thomas. Who has the edge at head coach and play caller? Brian Thomas. I think you got to go Brian Thomas.
Yeah, I agree. All right, I want to talk about wide receiver 7 moving forward, because for the most part, we know who the top 6 receivers are in dynasty leagues. And again, we'll go over it. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. That's your top 3. Your next group is Malik Neighbors, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and Brian Thomas. But who is wide receiver 7 in startup drafts? Let's have a debate next. This episode is brought to you by Chewy. You've probably heard of Chewy. They really do have everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Whether you're shopping for food, treats, or even pet healthcare, Chewy makes it fast, easy, and affordable. With over 100,000 products from all of your favorite brands, Chewy has everything your pet needs, from food to treats to toys to beds to grooming. And it's not just for dogs and cats. They've got supplies for birds, fish, reptiles, and small pets too. Chewy also makes it easy to manage your pet's health with prescriptions, telehealth visits, and even in-person vet clinics rolling out nationwide. And listen, auto ship is a game changer. I've got my dog's food that arrives every month. You don't have to worry about it. You can set it and forget it, and you can easily change and cancel at any time. Chewy has everything you need to keep your pet happy and healthy. Right now, you can save $20 on your first order and get free shipping by going to chewy.com or clicking the link in the description. Save $20 on your first order with free shipping by clicking the link in the description. Minimum purchase required. New customers only. Terms and conditions apply. See site for complete details. Welcome back to the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft Show with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now that the season is over, get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every day, and find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Matt, let's talk about wide receiver 7 in Dynasty League, because this is it's been a big debate. We know the top 6 players. Your options for wide receiver 7 include Puka Nacua, Nico Collins, Drake London, your guy AJ Brown, Marvin Harrison Jr., Ladd McConkey. Who are you picking out of that group?
See, I look at it a little bit differently in that I think Nico and Puka are closer to the group above them than whoever's behind those two.
Interesting.
You know, like we could have a battle between Nico and Puka. I would pick Nico. I just think long-term quarterback situation's better. I think he's more physically gifted. Tank Dell's situation, unfortunately, really works to Nico's advantage. I think Nico's really high on this list and is banging on the door of the guys you already named.
Kate, where do you stand?
I'm in full agreement here. I think Nico's probably being slept on a little bit by being left out of this conversation and not even being a factor. Now, Nico Collins, we have to, I think, put some context on his 2024 season. I think we're kind of forgetting about just how incredible that third-year breakout was. But like not even healthy, right? 12 games in 2024, posted 1,000 receiving yards and 7 touchdowns. That feels like a floor for Nico Collins right now, which I think is kind of truly bonkers. Now, I do think one aspect worth considering is the health component. We've never actually seen Nico Collins play a full NFL season. In fact, 14 games, 10 games, 15 games, 12 games. That does have to be part of the conversation, I think. But when you're looking at the ceiling from like a quarterback perspective, just from an opportunity perspective, from a talent perspective, I think Nico Collins very much rivals some of, the players we mentioned in the same vein, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like I think Amon-Ra St. Brown and Nico Collins are 1A, 1B for me at this point.
Matt, I got a hot take that I'm going to get off my chest. I guess I don't understand why Dynasty players are so low on Marvin Harrison Jr. He had, maybe it's because his rookie season wasn't quite as good as Neighbors and Brian Thomas, but he still had almost 900 yards and 8 touchdowns. And he was the full-time X receiver in Arizona. Like they did not move him around really at all. He had the hardest job of all of these rookie receivers. And I thought he was pretty good down the stretch. Like I thought he really started to come into his own. We were talking last year at the same exact time about Marvin Harrison Jr. being like a generational receiver prospect and being in the same tier as Jamar Chase and some of these other receivers that came out. And man, you're getting a guy that's 22 years old with a good quarterback, I think, in Kyler Murray. I think I would just rather have him than the likes of Drake London and AJ Brown and Ladd McConkey. And I love all those guys.
Yeah.
Am I being too much of a slave to draft capital here?
No, because we really shouldn't change our tune that much in 365 days. I mean, The world loved him if we rewind 12 months ago.
And it wasn't like he had an awful rookie season.
That's the thing. And
900 yards and 8 touchdowns used to be really good for a rookie receiver.
It wasn't Quentin Johnston's rookie year.
No, of course not.
I mean, it was good. And like you said, the usage was, he did the hard stuff. McBride doesn't really worry me. I would have him probably behind London. Smith Najigba and AJ Brown are a conversation for me.
Can we talk about the London one? Because I've been a big advocate of Drake London for a while. I think London's an awesome player. But man, Marvin Harrison is just so much more physically gifted than what Drake London is. And I know maybe the situation's not. I don't think London is in an awesome situation either. He's playing with a young quarterback who we don't really know a lot about, in Michael Penix. I think I would just rather
Pitts will be gone soon.
Yeah.
I mean, let's look back at, Drake London's first 2 seasons, which Drake London, for me, wide receiver 1 in the 2022 draft class by, a decent margin. But like Marvin Harrison Jr.'s rookie season, which we consider like so disappointing. Look at Drake London's first 2 seasons in the league. Wasn't playing in ideal circumstances, and we knew that. 866 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns as a first-year player in the league. second-year player, 905 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. And again, a lack of quarterback. Like there were a lot of contributing factors to that, I think, far outside of talent. But like when we're looking at Drake London in year 3, going into year 4, coming off a 1,200 yard 9 touchdown season, is it really that different than the generational prospect that we just were ranking as a top 5 dynasty wide receiver before he ever stepped onto the football field and posted what I think is probably an underrated rookie campaign given the circumstances? Like, I don't know. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. over Drake London is a pretty easy rank for me.
So the one thing I can 100% get on board with, though, is this is probably the lowest you could ever buy Harrison.
Absolutely.
If we do this a year from now, is he 3? Are we talking about Lamb versus Harrison? Like, we could easily write that story and it'd be very believable.
Well, and I even wonder, like, with somebody like Puka. Like, Puka's been unbelievable. But if Puka has another one of these seasons where, he misses 4 games with an ankle injury, are people just going to be kind of out? Not out, but like, are they just going to knock him with, knowing that he's not the most reliable receiver? I guess for me, I'm betting on the upside here. And I think if Marvin Harrison works out, we're now having a conversation about him being wide receiver 3 behind Chase and Jefferson. And if it only costs me wide receiver 7 to go get him, I would be willing to flip a Nico Collins or a Puka Nacua. And heck, Matt, I might even consider moving Amon-Ra St. Brown right now for Marvin Harrison.
I know you love JSN. JSN or Harrison?
Harrison by a lot.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, by a lot.
Garrett Wilson doesn't belong in this conversation at all. Like, doesn't even get his name mentioned on this podcast.
Talent-wise, absolutely. Yeah. He's as talented as all of these other names we're mentioning. I don't trust that Jets organization, and I don't really trust Fields to add value to the offense.
He's the only receiver in town by a mile right now, though.
Is there a chance he just leads the NFL in targets by like 15?
Maybe. Maybe they draft Warren or somebody like that, but I got to think he's getting a ridiculous target share.
Malachi Corley doesn't scare you at all?
Not so much.
No. All right, that is it for today's show. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On Dynasty our first listen every single day. I got to get a Malachi Corley talk. We haven't talked about him in like 12 months. So go follow Matt on Twitter at Williamson NFL. Follow Kate at Kate Magdziuk. I'm at Marcus _Mosher, and we will see you right back here tomorrow.